Roll call for January 24th, 2025, Senate Education, Senator Brennan. Senator Olson.
Here.
Senator Rothfuss.
Here.
Senator Scott.
Here.
Chairwoman Schuler.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. As I said before, we've got a couple of young parents here that have to drop off kids, so we give them a little extra flexibility. We go start a couple minutes late, so as long as we have a quorum, we're good to go. So Senator Brennan, I'm sure will be along lately. Today, we get to start off the morning with Senate File 62, Restrooms in Publicly Funded Schools, -2. And we're excited to hear from the good Senator Larson this morning. And so why don't you go ahead and walk us through this bill today?
All righty. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And fellow senators, I bring you Senate File 62. This comes about kind of out of a request from the superintendent in my area, in my city. They were having to deal with this topic, and were somewhat, hesitant to bring a policy, knowing it probably would head toward courts. And they would like direction from the state. Sometimes this is kind of unusual. They like to take care of things locally, but they think this is a big enough issue that we should deal with it at the state level. So that's why I'm bringing it. The bill is kind of drafted after the Oklahoma's bill that was passed in 2022. Currently, I think that's being challenged in Oklahoma. It's in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. I think they had a ruling, and the ruling was that Oklahoma bill was legit, I guess. I don't know how they said that it was fine. And but it's in appeals right now. There was somewhat another ruling in, I think it was federal district court in Kentucky that dealt with Title IX, where the Biden administration was kind of putting on some regulations that were challenged. And they said the Biden administration regulations that they tried to put on were not legal, or they were out of line, I guess. So we're back to the original Title IX regulations that have been put on. So I'll go ahead and go through the bill. Like it was said, the bill is restrooms in publicly funded schools. This is an act relating to school districts requiring public school children to use restrooms that align with their sex at birth, and requiring reasonable accommodations, and then providing exceptions. So the bill creates a new statute, 21-3-137, restrooms in public school requirements, definitions, penalties, and rulemaking. To begin with, it gives us definitions of what a coach is. It's a person including but not limited to coaches, assistant coaches, athletic trainers. Gives what multiple occupancy restrooms or changing rooms means. And that means a room in a public school building designed or designated to be used by more than one person at a time, at the same time, where persons may be in various stages of undress or in the presence of other persons. The term includes but is not limited to school restrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, or shower rooms. Defines what a school-sponsored athletic activity means. And then it goes to the meaning of what sex is, and that is defined in statute 2125-101A4. And that actually states that sex means the biological, physical conditions of being male or female determined by an individual's genetics anatomy at birth. Then we go on to page 3. This is kind of the meat of the bill in B. This is to ensure privacy and safety. Each public school district that serves students in pre-kindergarten through 12th grade in this state shall require every multiple occupancy restroom or changing room to be designated as follows: for the exclusive use of the male sex or the exclusive use of female sex. In C, it says each public school district shall provide a reasonable accommodation to any person who does not wish to use the multiple occupancy restroom or changing room. And then it says a reasonable accommodation shall include a single occupancy restroom or changing room. Down in D, it says, it defines that this section shall not apply to certain people that enter the multiple occupancy room. And it describes the circumstances. I better make sure I'm on the right page. Okay. On page 4, it says that they can enter these rooms for custodial maintenance, repair, or inspection purposes, to render emergency medical assistance. And then it states if a suitable meeting room or area is not available, a coach may enter a locker room before, during, or after school sponsored activities, provided these items are met. All students present must be fully clothed. The coach shall be accompanied by not less than one additional adult at all times. If the coach is of the opposite sex of the students present, the coach shall be accompanied by at least one adult employed by the school district and of the same sex as the students present. And then it states that the adults present shall not be current high school students. So they have to have an adult that isn't a student if need be. Then it goes on to section E. Each school district board or trustees shall adopt policies to provide for disciplinary action for persons who refuse to comply with this section. No school board or trustees shall adopt a policy contrary to the provisions of this section. And then this is probably the big one. Upon the Department of Education's finding of non-compliance with the provisions of section B, C, or D of this section, the non-compliant school district shall lose its accreditation under those two statutes. And then we go to H, a parent or legal guardian of a student enrolled in physically attending a public school district shall have a cause of action against the public school for non-compliance with the provisions of B, C, and D. And then in section 2, we go to some statutes that need amending. At the bottom of 5, we go to 21-2-304, duties of state boards of education. On to page 6, it states that in section 2, that kind of lost here, the state board shall enforce the uniform state educational program standards, which will include these statutes that we are bringing forward, which include the loss of accreditation status in the school district if the school district is found to be non-compliance with these requirements. And then on page 7, the duties of the Board of Trustees, which would state the same. They need to write a policy that will follow this new bill. So act would take effect immediately. Our superintendent wants to bring forward a policy right away because it's a big deal in our school. So thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm here for questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Senator Larson? Okay, Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, I appreciate that this was a concern that was raised by your district superintendent, but I'm curious if the language about, on page 5, the G paragraph, indicating that a non-complying school district would lose accreditation as a school district, was supported by your district superintendent, and that there'd be a private right of action against the school district, because those seem rather shockingly significant, and I guess I'd be really amazed if your school district superintendent said, yeah, if we have a little flaw with the bathroom policy, we should lose our accreditation as a school district.
Madam
Senator Arson?
Chairwoman and Senator Rothfuss, he says he doesn't have a problem with it. They're ready to go forward. It is a very big penalty, but I think we need a big penalty. There was discussion of maybe taking away dollars, but I think if we took dollars away, we'd probably be headed to court again. But didn't have a problem with it.
Okay, can you give me that person's contact information offline? I want to call him.
Yes, yes, Senator Rothfuss. In fact, he will be hopefully on
Excellent.
on Zoom.
That would be
here in
spectacular.
just a
That'll
bit,
time saving.
and hopefully he'll tell you the same thing.
All right. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
are you aware of any problems where existing school boards have not been able to manage this, or circumstances have arisen that districts just don't feel like they can develop their own policies at this point?
Madam
Senator Larson?
Chairwoman, Senator Rothfuss, yes, and it was in my school district. They have been advised by their lawyer that this probably wouldn't be something they should do without state support. They think it's beyond their means to defend it, because it will go to court, I guess.
Madam Chairman, do
Yes,
you
go
mean
ahead.
a specific interpretation, or do you mean having a policy?
Senator?
I think having the policy, yeah. I guess I'm not sure what you're referring to,
Well,
what the
Madam
question
Chairman,
is.
it seems that every school and every district probably has some policies at this point in time with regard to who can use which bathroom, I would expect. And so my question is, was it a desire for a specific policy where attorneys thought that policy would be a potential violation of US Constitution and federal law, and therefore they didn't want to do it? Or was it a circumstance where the district felt powerless and couldn't cast any policy forward?
Madam
Senator?
Chairwoman, Senator Rothfuss, I think it's both. They are advised, I think, by the attorney they have, that if they brought forward a policy, it would probably be contested, the policy. So they have not brought one. They have stated in school board meetings that when the state comes forward and brings a law, then they will be bringing a policy. So they have one ready. And from the comments I've heard, I don't think there are schools that have it, but I'm gonna let maybe my superintendent will hopefully state that.
Sure. Madam
Follow-up,
Chairman,
sir?
yeah, a different question. Do you agree that all of our transgender students in public schools have equal protection under law?
Yes, I think they do, but I think providing them a separate bathroom would be a way of fulfilling that, that they have a right to be there and be
Madam-
treated fairly.
Madam Chairman, has separate but equal been generally considered to be equal protection under the law by the Supreme Court?
Senator?
I think you're beyond me, so I'm not sure.
Madam Chairman, as you know, Senator, that was the basis for most of the civil rights laws and a lot of the discrimination cases that were considered in the 60s and early 70s. And it was basically effectively the idea that a separation is actually typically stigmatizing and is a discrimination in a public setting as opposed to equal treatment. So I was just wondering why in this circumstance, if you share my belief that the transgender group is entitled to equal protection, why it would be different this time, that by isolating and separating, we're treating them equally.
Senator?
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. Senator, I'm not sure how to, I don't know what to say. I really don't.
Thank you.
Yes.
Senator
I'm
Olson?
stumbling, obviously.
Madam Chairman, I have a couple questions, but I will follow up on that last question. It's not necessarily the case that they have to have their own restroom, that they can go to the restroom of the sex assigned at birth to them, based on the way the bill is written and the definition of gender or sex.
Senator?
Is that correct?
That is correct. I would agree with that.
My question for you, and maybe you just hadn't contemplated this, but the way this is drafted, it only applies to a public school district. So I'm wondering about our state authorized charter schools and
Senator?
whether you've given thought to whether this should apply to them or not.
Madam Chairwoman, Senator Olson, I didn't even think about that. I would surely think that would be a friendly amendment to bring that in.
Okay.
I don't know if they are considered not part of the public schools. I don't know. They are funded through the public schools, so I don't know.
Did you have a follow-up?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
I got what I needed.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, they are clearly identified in statutes as public schools. Whether they're part of the school district is another question that you need a lawyer on.
That, Madam Chairwoman,
Yes.
that may be something we need to amend it.
Okay. Other questions from the committee?
I do have one more.
Yes, go ahead. Follow up.
Madam Chairman, thank you. This is a different question. Under the list of exceptions in the bill, have you given any thought or had any discussion about young children or people with or children with disabilities? I'm not sure how it works in every school, but I can imagine, what if every kindergarten class in a school is taught by, say, for example, a female teacher, and she may have to enter the restroom to assist with a young kindergartner, or the nurse may have to enter to assist with the kindergartner. Have you given thought to how we can deal with age or disability?
Senator?
I have not thought about that, but I think, if you had I think it's probably covered in what we put in there. I mean, you don't think so? Okay.
I think
would-
you have the overall, sorry, Madam Chairman.
No, go ahead.
I think you have the overall exception where they can be provided a single occupancy bathroom, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good solution for every school that's gonna have kindergartners and potentially students with disabilities. So we may just need to think about broadening the exception just a little to cover those scenarios.
Senator?
Madam Chairwoman, definitely that would be a friendly suggestion. I didn't think of it.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
hope you have an idea.
Okay.
And Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Similar question that comes to mind, and maybe you just don't deal with it, but as a parent, when you have a very young child of the opposite gender, they usually end up going into a common restroom with you. You can't just say, all right, little 3-year-old, good luck, there's your restroom. Let's meet up back here a little later. So now admittedly, those are often too young, but you actually have pre-K listed in here. So you do have a circumstance, as well as the case where, and maybe it just wouldn't be appropriate for use, but if a parent were coming into a building, at the same time, they could potentially use that single occupancy restroom, so they might be able to navigate the policy, but that's relatively common practice. And Madam Chairman, I would also say for IDEA, as Senator Olson was discussing, you have a lot of circumstances where you have high needs students that need the support. And again, fairly common practice might use a common restroom, and those types of situations currently would just work themselves out. Under this, you would lose accreditation for the entire school district, not even the school, right? The school district. So yeah, you might want to tread carefully on that one.
Other questions? I have some questions, Senator Larson, on page 4. You know, the old coach in me came out when I was looking through this page. A couple different things. It starts talking about a suitable meeting room or area that's available. The coach may enter a locker room before, during, or after, provided that all students present are fully clothed. You know, I coached for 40 years, so I coached boys and girls. Would we consider their athletic uniforms, their track uniforms, their basketball uniforms as being fully clothed? That'd be my first question.
Madam Chairwoman, I would guess that would be correct. I don't know what, yeah, I think so.
Okay. Quite often, I would just tell you, with girls, sometimes they're in a variety of being clothed as you go into the locker room. So I don't know, there could be some issues there. The other one I have a question about is on that same page. A coach shall be accompanied by not less than one additional adult at all times. As a head coach, when I was a head coach in basketball, sometimes I had male assistants, sometimes I had female assistants. And certainly it was much easier if I had female assistant coaches. And certainly we made sure that the girls were all clothed, obviously, when the male assistant coaches came in. But I keep thinking about our smaller schools. Sometimes they may have one coach that does everything from, you know, they may not have a separate JV coach, sophomore coach, freshman coach, and let's just say it's a male coach. And basically, they've got to find an additional adult to be in there, which that's not necessarily, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it also mentions down here on page 4 that adult has to be employed by the school district and of the same sex. I think our smaller schools are going to have a really difficult time with that, where their we're having a tough time getting coaches, let's just face it. It's similar to what we're seeing with teachers in general. And so I think there's some language there that I would maybe want to take a look at, but I don't know if you're interested in seeing any kind of changes or accommodations we could make with some of that language.
Madam Chairwoman, I would be welcoming that.
Okay.
You have a better idea of what might occur, and getting advice from you would
Okay.
be great.
I'll put my little thinking hat on, and then maybe I can come up with an amendment for that, so.
Madam Chairwoman, and maybe just the employed by the school district might be taken out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
I was, yeah, Senator, I was thinking about, I know sometimes parents will go on a trip, let's just say with the freshman girls basketball team, and maybe the coach is a male, and I could see where, you know, you could maybe ask a mom to go in if that were the issue. They're not employed by the school district, but if, you know, again, that would just, and I think sometimes just for the sake of being cautious and making sure that someone doesn't make a false claim is not a bad idea. So anyway, if you would be okay with that, maybe I'll take a stab at that for some language. Senator Rothfuss?
Madam Chairwoman, can I speak real quick?
Yes, you bet.
Hopefully, my superintendent, I hope he's on there, or maybe another one, and maybe they have an idea.
Okay.
I hope. Maybe
Yeah.
we can ask it.
Super. Senator Rothfuss?
Yeah. Madam Chairman, I don't think this bill would allow any possibility for something that was like a co-ed sport under any circumstance, or if you had a young girl playing on a male athletic team, which is allowed under the Wyoming High School Activities Association in certain circumstances. Again, if that young woman entered that men's locker room, the accreditation of the school district would be terminated. No exceptions. So, and perhaps someone would have the good sense to file a substantial lawsuit against the district and make a lot of money off of that. So I don't know what the remedy is for that, but it seems like that would be a substantial amendment, because there's nothing in here that contemplates the fact that there are reasonable circumstances for multiple genders in a locker room.
I have no
Senator?
comment on that, but it's something we should discuss. Yes, not sure how to fix it.
Any other questions for Senator Larson? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead then, and unless you have anything else you'd want to add, Senator Larson, or are you good?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony, and we'll just go ahead and open it up for the public to testify, so please come forward and tell us what you want us to know about this bill. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, please introduce yourself, even though I think we all know you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, committee members. Dickie Shaner speaking on behalf of State Superintendent Dagenfelder this morning. She recognizes there are several bills related to this sentiment of keeping bathrooms confined to biological sex, and she supports that overarching goal. With this piece of legislation in particular, some of the things that have already been noted by Senator Rothfuss, Senator Olson, those are some amendments and things we need to deal with this bill, and she's definitely in support of having this apply to higher ed as well. But she understands there needs to be some exceptions related to the topics we've discussed this morning, IDEA, younger kids, et cetera.
Questions for Mr. Shaner? Okay, thank you so much. Please keep coming up, everybody. I know there's a whole lot of you in here that want to testify today. I can tell. You have that look in your eyes, all of you. And we can come up 2 or 3 at a time if you'd like. It's just fine and dandy. Whoever gets here first gets to go first. How about that?
I guess
Go
that's
ahead.
me. Good morning, Chairwoman Schuler, members of the committee. My name is Patricia McCoy. It's a pleasure to be before you again today. I was here on Wednesday to speak to this. I know some of you got the opportunity to meet my daughter and speak with her, but she did not get to speak that day since we ran over, and she can't be here since she has to work today. So if it's okay with you, I would like to read her statement to you and not mine.
Go ahead.
She says, I am here as a citizen and graduate from this school district in Laramie County. For the longest time, we were always taught one thing. Girls will use the designated women's restroom at school with the other girls, and boys were not allowed to go in at all. And boys will use the designated male restroom at school with the other boys, and girls were not allowed to go in it at all. That is one of the first things they teach kindergartners in school, along with learning about cooties and girls rule and boys drool. But that was what we were taught. Under no circumstance was a girl allowed into the male restroom and a boy allowed into the female restroom. I have never been one to hate the LGBT community. Many friends I have are part of that community, and never would I make them feel less than myself or others. But in schools, we should not be allowing students to go into bathrooms that are opposite of their biological sex. Throughout all my time in school, I have always used the women's restroom, and any of my friends who were transmasculine used the bathroom with me. It isn't just about protecting everyone else, it's also about protecting LGBT youth who already deal with bullying in class, outside of class, and outside of school. If people truly want to protect LGBT youth at our school, then they should think about how to let a person who is biologically female but identifies as male walk into a men's restroom filled with teenage boys who are not only stronger than that person, but also more hurtful than that person, and ask them if they feel safe going into that bathroom alone. If you want to protect LGBTQ youth in our schools, then let them have gender-neutral, single-person bathrooms where they can use the restroom by themselves in a space where they feel safe. Like at South High, where in the SAC they have 2 bathrooms and 1 family restroom where only 1 person is allowed in at a time. When I was in high school there and had friends who identified as the opposite sex of their biological sex, I would walk with them to the SAC where they could use the restroom freely without worrying about crowds of students hanging around different stalls or sinks who could say hurtful things to them or worse, physically attack them. While I know schools try their best to not let bullying or harassment happen in school, that does not mean it always works. And as someone who has almost lost myself and friends to bullying and harassment at school, the bathrooms are the biggest target for it. This is not just protecting women or men in bathrooms or protecting children. This is about protecting everyone and creating safe environments and places for people to go to, whether they identify as transgender or not. We need to protect each other and we need to protect students. That is why I believe this bill should be enforced all over the school districts throughout the state. And I also believe that gender-neutral bathrooms should be put in all schools moving forward. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me
Questions
to
for
read
Ms.
that.
McCoy? Tell your daughter thank you for her testimony.
Of
Sorry we
course.
couldn't get to it the other day, so.
No worries.
Appreciate it. Okay, sir, Mr. Brown, please introduce yourself.
Madam Chair, Boyd Brown, I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming Association of School Administrators. A little background on me, I've been the superintendent of the largest and smallest districts in the state. Have a pretty good background there. Couple issues, and you guys have already picked up on most of them. I don't think bathroom policy has any place in the accreditation realm. I think our accreditation is where it's at, and I'm not aware of any superintendents that support that. I think the idea of having someone else in the bathroom is problematic at times, especially with some of our special ed students where we have changing tables and showers and everything. Again, Chairman Schuler, the coaching issue is definitely difficult. When I was the superintendent in Claremont, I had the same head coach for boys and girls basketball, and having somebody else there that would be the appropriate sex, especially as a school district personnel, might be problematic. So I think there's some issues there. I think it's one of those issues that most districts are trying to deal with on an individual basis with students and trying to make sure that they take care of them, whether they're a special ed student. We have students that come to school that are not even potty trained yet. So there are a lot of issues that you have to deal with, and I think trying to be too punishing to a school district for trying to work with a student and their parents on an individual basis is not a good way to go there. I think we still want to have the ability to work with each one of those students and each one of those parents on an individual basis. So again, not against the policy, it's a decision for you guys. I think most districts are trying to work through it on an individual basis and work with whatever the situation is, whether it's special ed, whether it's a student who, I've worked with students who have anxiety about going into a public bathroom, and we gave them the opportunity to go to an individual bathroom as well whenever I was a school administrator and district administrator. And with that, I'll leave the time to somebody else unless there's questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. I think Senator Rothfuss has a question for you.
Yeah, a quick one. And obviously, as we're building new schools, we do tend to build in, I think, more individual use restrooms, and there's an appropriate trend towards, non-gendered individual use restrooms. But you've served in multiple districts. How commonly available are these types of accommodating restrooms throughout a school building? It seems like typically just a couple of teacher restrooms or something, but you've got more experience. So what's your experience with the availability of remedy on this?
Mr. Brown?
Madam Chair, Senator Rothfuss, usually it is using some faculty restrooms as individual restrooms, or the nurse's office where there's usually a restroom, sometimes allowing coaches' offices as well. So I think there's usually at least one or two different buildings. In the smallest district I was in, it would have probably been, we had the nurse's office and then faculty rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Farmer. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming School Boards Association. Just because there was a little bit of discussion on this, just to run through a little bit. In 2024, the Biden administration did pass rules changing Title IX, implementing extended protections to persons identifying as LGBTQ+. In June, in a federal court in Kansas, Wyoming became subject to an injunction. So in Wyoming, from that point forward, we reverted back to the 2020 rules. Just earlier this month, in Kentucky, a federal court essentially found those rules to be unconstitutional, sort of a nationwide impact. So those rules are gone, subject to any kind of appeal. However, with the new administration, no appeal is anticipated. So really the state of things with regard to Title IX moves back to the 2020 rules, which address sexual harassment and gender identity as being sort of outside of the prohibitions or I'm sorry, the prohibition on sexual harassment and gender discrimination is regardless of a person's characteristics. So it's not specific to those protections. So the litigation referenced in both the Fourth Circuit and the Seventh Circuit applied to Title IX. So when we have bathroom cases in front of federal courts right now, it applied to Title IX. So here we have state law setting out something, sort of questions of how do we manage this. And again, the devil's in the details, and Madam Chair, there's a couple of places that I want to point out concerns. Certainly on page 4, you've walked through a number of those concerns, talking about certain conditions that are not identified as exceptions, if you will, talking about the age, the disability instances, talking about the occasions with coaching of how practical the specific language is here, specifically on line 17, talking about having an adult employed by the school district. So thank you for identifying those. Our more substantial concerns come on page 5, and start page 5, lines 1 through 3, where it requires a school district board of trustees to adopt policies to provide disciplinary actions for persons who refuse to comply with this section. Typically, a school district has a policy that says the district can implement disciplinary action for any violation of the laws. This would be a specific policy for one violation of the law, and then everything else would fall under sort of the general exception. So this really isn't needed. There's already generally something that says, hey, if you violate the law, you can be disciplined. There's already policy to that. So this would be the only circumstance where we call out something that you would need to have a policy for discipline. Beyond that, it's generally in contracts or other things. Perhaps for your knowledge, for your edification, if a school board member willfully refuses or neglects to perform their duty under the law, they're subject to a misdemeanor. We could be charged with a misdemeanor with both monetary and jail fines. So board members take it pretty seriously. When you say, board, you've got to do something, we try to do that. Next up, lines 8 through 12, where we talk about the accreditation issue and losing accreditation. It's not really what accreditation's about right now. Accreditation's about the performance of the district. How are they doing in order in the delivery of the basket of educational goods? So this would introduce a whole nother element, and this again would be the only element where if you fail one thing, you fail all of accreditation. Most of the time when a district's not accredited, it's assigned supports. It's given some sort of support from the state to help it get back to where it needs to be. And so typically it's not non-accredited, it's provisional accreditation or accreditation with conditions or something like that. So this would be unique. This would be something that we've not really ever seen before. Senator Rothfuss notes on lines 14 through 18, the right of action. And again, this probably is a right of action in a state court, probably not a right of action in a federal court. Federal court, you would have to have the standing, the harm, the direct harm in order to do it. And most, again, of those cases that we've seen on bathrooms have come in federal courts dealing with standing there. So the accreditation issue does appear again on page 6, lines 15 through 17, and page 7, lines 4 through 7. So just specifically ask you on that accreditation issue and on that policy issue on page 5 to strike those provisions and consider the exceptions that you've already discussed on page 4. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Questions for Mr. Farmer? I just have one, Mr. Farmer, on those, again, talking about accreditation. Are you saying basically that you think that you could probably just put in there, instead of a loss of total accreditation, just provisional accreditation? Is that what you would suggest, or?
Madam Chair, I would suggest striking that.
I'll just strike it.
I think if you tell a district, to implement this, then the district's going to make its good faith effort to implement it. I don't think you need to have this accreditation piece in it at all.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
What would be the implications? Let's say a school district had one bathroom out of compliance, G paragraph kicks in, the district loses its accreditation fully. So let's just walk down the path of this legislation passing. And we'll say it's this school district, which has several thousand students operating in the schools. What happens next?
Mr. Farmer?
So, Madam Chair, that's a realm that I wouldn't know exactly because I don't generally deal with that. A school district without accreditation certainly has threats to funding or whatever. Our model really has been built around providing assistance to help somebody that has failed in one area of accreditation to get that back. So typically, we're talking about academics, and they're provided supports by the state through the Department of Education. I don't know that we have really seen many instances of flat out not accredited. Most instances where there are errors, where there are deficiencies, the district is given a provisional accreditation. Again, accreditation is not my area of expertise, so I don't know that we really see many instances where a district's just flat out not accredited. You could look at that extreme case, and in the long term, without accreditation, the district wouldn't be able to operate.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Farmer? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Come on up. Others in the room that would like to testify, please come on up, and we'll just keep rolling here. Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Madam Chairman, my name is Nathan Winters. I'm the president of the Wyoming Family Alliance. I just wanted to provide potentially a couple solutions on this issue and answer a few of the questions that may have risen. In my current capacity, I have the opportunity often to have a broad overview of legislation occurring in both chambers. And so when we look at how the question rose, and I appreciate the nature of the question, what about reasonable accommodations for coaching personnel and others? What would be the best way to do that? I just wanted to let you know that I can get with the sponsor of the bill or with one of you and address that, because the language does exist in a different piece of legislation that will be seen. But what it does is provide simply these words: a person or employee who enters the changing area, restroom or sleeping quarters, while in the performance of the person or the employee's official duties. So it exempts them. It also then, of course, exempts folks such as cleaning personnel. There's a number of things that need to be addressed in that capacity, but thankfully I believe that it would be an easy fix, because also when we consider safety personnel, folks who are responding to a medical condition, those kinds of things. So I would like to maybe just meet with the bringer of the bill and maybe address those issues. The other thing too, I just wanted to say, I do believe that it's best to set this kind of policy at a state level. And the reason I say that is because, of course, with school districts who obviously play sports against one another, possibly from opposite sides of the state, it would be best to have at least some sort of statewide understanding of what is expected here and how these issues would be handled. And so I think that this is a bill that tries to address an issue, and I would not mind at all trying to help the bringer of the bill. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Questions for Mr. Winter? Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you. And thanks for being here. Appreciate your testimony. You know, that analysis, we use a lot, the justification for the top-down solution is we want some uniformity, and that provides clarity. Would it be your interest then to have, you know, a federal mandate passed as well, so that there's uniformity across all states in the country?
Mr. Winter?
Madam Chairman, no. And this gets, of course, Senator Rothfuss into something that's far deeper. It's the question of subsidiarity. The solution that's closest to the people is best. In this particular case, we actually can't go to the closest solution, which is a school board. It's the next solution up that actually will have these states that are these places that are playing one another in sports very commonly. And so I think at that, it's best to try to find the lowest but best level to place this, and I believe that that is placed at a statewide level,
Madam
not a
Chairman.
federal.
Do the districts, do our school districts have the authority right now to set this policy? They do, correct?
Mr. Winter?
Madam Chairman, one would assume that yes, they do, but also the influences in some school districts may be different than others. And
Right.
so having a
Madam Chairman,
standard would be
so
best.
following up on that, so I mean, what it comes down to, what it sounds like is you want uniformity, but you want a uniform policy that's kind of consistent with the policy you want. And that's the concern I have. So there are differences among school districts was the point you made. That was exactly what I expected. Same thing with differences among states, why we don't want a top-down solution there, because it might not be the one that our state typically agreed with. As far as the competition, though, we do compete with other states. We compete across the border. We have all sorts of interactions with states that have different policies than we do. So I guess I'm not tracking why this needs to be a top-down state-level solution. I'm fairly confident that my school district can manage this. My school district has not asked me to provide one more mandate from the legislature on what they can and can't do. I mean, it's like what we do every day. You were here, you know that. That's the way we roll. But I'm not hearing my district asking for that. So if a district wants to be told what to do, which it sounds like we've got one district that wants to be told what to do, then maybe we can tell that district what to do. But would you be supportive of exception language, which would allow a district that didn't feel like they were compelled to have to be told what to do? Just like as a state, we don't typically like it when the feds do. What are your thoughts?
Mr. Winter?
Madam Chairman, I really appreciate the entire framing of that question. When we look at the highest, we have no jurisdiction over other states. So you go to the highest jurisdiction that can set policy, which would be the Wyoming legislature. And so I think the entirety of that question provides the background for why this is the body that is designed to answer this specific question, because this is the highest body that can set policy for this state, and that is the duty of the legislature.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
You literally said in your last statement that governance closest to the people was best, which is exactly contrary to the previous statement you made. But it tends to be more consistent with the belief I share, which is that we'll try and go as close to the people as possible. So based on the last statement, though, I'll just conclude that if we had the availability of a federal mandate at the highest level available to us, if we could convince our legislators to put forward a mandate on behalf of us at the federal level, that would be your choice.
Madam
Mr.
Chairman.
Winter?
Thank you very much, because it gives me, again, the opportunity to explain what the doctrine of subsidiarity tells us, that is best if it's closest to the people. Sometimes, though, you have an issue that rises that's a statewide issue. So this now is a statewide question that needs to be answered by this statewide body, because it's a policy decision that crosses school boundaries, school district boundaries. So this is the place where this decision should be made, and
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
really appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Winter? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today. Welcome.
Madam
Please
Chairman,
introduce
members of
yourself.
the committee, Tate Mullen, Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. Again, I share a lot of the concerns that the committee has raised, as well as the Wyoming School Boards Association and the Wyoming Administrators Association. We have our work within the Wyoming Education Association. One of our components is our Safe and Just Schools work. And we believe that every school across the state of Wyoming should be open, free, and safe to all students, regardless of their identity, race. And we know that students learn best when they feel safe, when they feel welcomed. Some of the data that's relevant to that work within our Safe and Just Schools is the Trevor Project just released some information that looks at the impact on trans youth where they have been targeted in legislation, where their identity has been targeted. And those pieces of legislation across the United States are directly and positively correlated to increases in anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. Additionally, from UCLA, the School of Law, the Williams Institute, released a study that demonstrated that transgender people are 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime. I know the impetus for this is based on the notion of keeping people safe. I think the impact of the bill does the exact opposite. Additionally, we do have some concerns. I'm glad that the Title IX discussion has already been brought up, right? That has been vacated. That is as it applies to students. However, the Bostock decision still does hold, as does Title VII rules promulgated by the EEOC and Department of Labor. And I want to be very clear, this puts districts in a very precarious position. I want to read from the EEOC rules that they have promulgated. Courts have long recognized that employers may have separate bathrooms, locker rooms, and showers for men and women, or may choose to have unisex or single-use bathrooms, locker rooms, and showers. The Commission has taken the position that employers may not deny an employee equal access to a bathroom, locker room, or shower that corresponds to the employee's gender identity. In other words, if an employer has separate bathrooms, locker rooms, or showers for men and women, all men, including transgender men, should be allowed to use the men's facilities, and all women, including transgender women, should be allowed to use the women's facilities. Now, mind you, this is as it applies to the employer-employee relationship. So the Title IX would have been as it would have applied to students. That one was vacated, but the Title VII issues for sexual harassment and potentially hostile work environments still do apply. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mullen? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome. Please introduce yourselves, even though we may know some of you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. My name is Elliot Hinkle. I'm from Casper, Wyoming, and I am representing myself. I'm also a transgender person. I have numerous concerns about this bill, and I oppose it and urge you to as well. One concern is that this bill creates opportunity to discriminate and harass anyone who is not perceived as a man or a woman enough to use the restroom. Even folks who are not transgender will be impacted by this bill. Do you trust that all coaches have the education to determine someone's sex? Why would we let any one person have the ability to check the gender of our children and students? This seems to open the door to misuse to the point of sexual harassment and assault, and what student would feel safe saying, no, I don't want to participate in this? I've heard from numerous parents of children who aren't transgender who are very concerned about how this bill will impact their children. How will women and men who aren't perceived as men or women navigate this? There's safety concerns that are unfounded, as studies indicate there's no increase in safety risks in schools that allow transgender students to use restrooms matching their gender identity. And denying restroom access based on gender identity increases risks of harassment and bullying for transgender students. For practical challenges, enforcement of this policy will require schools to monitor students' restroom use, raising privacy concerns as well as logistical difficulties and pulling them away from the job of educating our students. I'm not sure how this aligns with limited or small government or limiting government overreach as well. This creates potential liability for schools in lawsuits over privacy violations and costly litigation. There's also non-compliance with federal civil rights protections. Everyone has to use the restroom. So why would this bill be important enough to spend taxpayer dollars on when this impacts about 2,500 people in Wyoming's 600,000 people in our state? Versus making sure high-quality educators are in our schools and all students have access to high-quality education. I welcome questions, and I'd like to take the opportunity to ask you each individually, which bathroom door should I enter? If you support this bill, where would you have me go to the bathroom? Thank you.
Questions for Elliot? All right, thank you so much for your testimony. Next.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, committee. My name is Sarah Burlingame. I'm the Executive Director of Wyoming Equality, and we are in opposition to this bill. And I have a favor to ask. My communications coordinator was ready to give testimony this last Wednesday, but in a grand irony, she had asked for today off because she is coaching. And I'm not an athlete, you'll be surprised to know. But she is. She is an athlete and she's a coach and she's someone who takes that commitment very seriously. So it's an honor for me to read her testimony today, even as I marvel at her capacity to continue serving her community, even as this body attempts to reject that service. There's so few folks who identify as transgender in Wyoming, but for whatever reason, they happen to be some of the very best people that we know, loving and serving our state even when it doesn't love them back. So the following is Santi's testimony. She says, "My name is Santi Murillo. I'm the communications coordinator for Wyoming Equality, an openly transgender woman, and the first transgender student athlete at the University of Wyoming. I also have experience coaching high school cheer, which gives me a deep understanding of the complexities faced by students, coaches, and school communities. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today about this legislation and share how it would directly impact individuals like me. I recognize the concerns this bill seeks to address, but I also want to highlight the unintended consequences that could result if enacted. As written, this bill would require transgender individuals like me, Santi, to use restrooms that align with our sex at birth rather than our gender identity. This would mean, for example, that I, a transgender woman, would be forced to share facilities with teenage boys. This would not only cause confusion, but could also create uncomfortable and potentially unsafe situations for everyone involved. And I also want to point out that this bill undermines one of Wyoming's most cherished values, local control. Wyoming has a proud tradition of allowing school districts and communities to make decisions that best meet their unique needs. By mandating this policy at the state level, we strip local school boards of their autonomy to craft solutions that reflect the values and circumstances of their communities. This one-size-fits-all approach disregards the trust we place in our local leaders to serve their students and families. And I want to emphasize that transgender individuals have always lived and have always contributed to our communities, including as students, coaches, and athletes. We're not asking for special treatment or to undermine anyone's privacy or safety. What we are asking for is a compromise, one that recognizes our right to exist, feel safe, and continue serving our communities as we always have. The reality is that bills like this go beyond setting policies. They send a message that transgender people are unwelcome in Wyoming. This legislation doesn't just regulate spaces, it attempts to erase our identities and contributions. As a proud Wyomingite, I've dedicated my life to making this state a better place, and I want to continue doing so without fear of being singled out or excluded. We are not asking for an extremist position or for policies without accommodations. We're simply asking for a solution that allows transgender individuals to exist authentically and safely in Wyoming schools and communities. I urge you to consider that not only the human impact of this bill, but also the importance of preserving local control for Wyoming school districts and communities to address these matters in a way that works best for them. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to share my perspective." And she says, I'm happy to answer any questions, but she's not, because she's not here. So I'll just say that there is an interesting catch-22 that arises in this conversation. Multiple folks have attested, well, we're going to solve this in the courts. Litigation will address that. And I would just say that laws that invite frequent litigation are not the laws that are fiscally responsible or best serve our communities. But also, we have failed to bring a lawsuit thus far because there are so few students that this applies to. There is a history in our country of policing bathrooms, and there is a history of using the arm of the legislature to harass, humiliate, and call out those considered separate but equal. That's not a proud history. And so we ask you to reject this bill today, and I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Ms. Burlingame? Thank you. And, oh, go ahead. Senator Rothfuss.
Madam Chairman, I do have one question, and you may not know the answer, but you may based on conversations you've had. I'm curious about the level of accommodation that schools around the state may or may not have. It seems like it's almost on a school-by-school basis, whether there's appropriate accommodation where there's just no problem versus a school that maybe we built in 1940 where there really is nothing there, and there would be clear and concerning discrimination. But do you have any sense of that?
Ms. Burlingame?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Senator. Yes, and it's a I'll make it brief, but there's a funny story. I was sitting in a conference back east, and someone mentioned to me that Wyoming was the gold standard when it came to addressing these things. And I thought, that's unlikely. This was about 9 years ago. And they explained to me that, and you know, if you look at the Wyoming Constitution, right, like when we first started regulating schools, we said separate for equal around race, right? But it was based around the idea that our schools were so rural. Everything about Wyoming and how we've settled our schools is based on the idea of how few students we have and how we're going to have to make do with what we have, even when it came to race. And so what I heard from someone not from our state was that Wyoming really did have this sort of deeply libertarian idea of letting each individual school district craft their response, and that the sort of gold standard of it was that it began with the student. So like, as we've heard, you know, superintendents talk to, you know, these small school districts, they might say, hey, what makes you feel comfortable? And the student might say, oh, I'd love to be left alone. Like, I'd love to just, you know, keep my head down and go my way. And another student might say, could I use the nurse's office? That would feel comfortable to me. So instead of mandating a one-size-fits-all, they began with the student. And I mean, I can't imagine a better thing to be proud of for our state, for saying that we rejected a one-size-fits-all. And our school district said, well, we begin with the student, and we begin with what works for the whole student body. Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions for Ms. Burlingame? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Sophia Gomelski. I'm a student at the university now, but I've lived and gone to school in Wyoming for my entire life, and I'm here to urge you to vote no on this bill. I apologize in advance for my somewhat long comments, but I'd argue we've been talking about this subject for way too long anyway. I'm concerned about just about every provision in this bill that will make students a lot less comfortable and less safe in their schools. Trans people walk through the state of Wyoming afraid enough already. Research shows that trans people, not cisgender people, are actually the ones who experience violence and discrimination when using the restroom. The 2015 US Transgender Survey found that many trans people avoid public restrooms out of fear for how they may be treated. My best friend in high school was no different. Now, while his name was Andrew, and he very much looked like and sounded like an Andrew, that's not what his birth certificate said. I didn't get to hang out with my best friend during the lunch period because he didn't want to make women uncomfortable, and he would drive home to use the bathroom every day. We both did theater together, and he would change in the hallway since our dressing rooms were designated for only men or only women. Despite bringing national attention to our school because of how talented he is, it should come as no shock to you that when we graduated, Andrew moved away because of laws like this. This bill flies in the face of limited government intervention, and it threatens to erode the autonomy of public institutions. The idea that every public school district should provide a reasonable accommodation is incredibly surprising to me, since this government overreach and clear liability makes no attempt to ensure that accommodations can actually be achieved. There's no fiscal note attached to this bill. I've attended both public and charter schools, and I know that my schools didn't have any single-person bathrooms. Maybe the principal's office? But will trans kids be forced to go there? Will they be singled out like this? Being a teenager growing up is hard enough. Do you think that might affect their self-esteem? But what happens if, I say that I'm not comfortable using the women's bathroom, as the bill language allows me to do? Why does one student or two students get to use a one-person bathroom, but I don't? Will schools lose accreditation unless they make these bathrooms, enough of these bathrooms, to accommodate the influx of students who inevitably want to use or don't want to use a multi-occupancy bathroom? I'm seriously asking this committee to not pass this bill before adding a provision outlining what would make somebody trans enough. How will the Department of Education find out about non-compliance? Should we have middle schoolers policing each other's genitalia? What kind of bullying would result from this? What kind of gender dysmorphia at that age? What if one of the kids is wrong or guesses wrong? How will the school go about determining this? What happens if I forget my ID on my way to the bathroom? I'm asking you to think about how this will affect the culture in a space and environment that is intended for learning and inclusivity. I think we have gone a little bit sideways about what Wyoming values really are. Love thy neighbor and mind thy business. This bill violates the equal protection of our Constitution, which will inevitably result in costly litigation. But more importantly, it will cost us our values as the equality state. Please, I am urging you to uphold our Wyoming tradition of limited government. Please, don't tread on me and vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Any questions for Sophia? I didn't catch your last name, and I think I probably would have butchered it anyway, but any questions for Sophia? Okay, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Others in the room that would like to testify on this bill? Okay, I think we have some folks on Zoom. Ashley, if you want to let them in. I'm not sure who's coming in first, but take a look.
Madam Chairman, at the top of my list is Jessica Evans, so we will start there.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Evans, whenever you are ready. Mr. Curtis, if you want to start us off while we wait for Ms. Evans, that'd be great.
Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jay Curtis. I am the superintendent, Park County School District #1 in Powell. I'm going to start by thanking Senator Larson for answering my call and bringing a bill forward. Next, I'm going to tell you that I do support this bill, and I sent an email to that effect. But I do want to correct, I believe that there may have been a misunderstanding between Senator Larson and I. I do not believe that accreditation should be up as a penalty. In fact, I don't think there should be a penalty in this bill for noncompliance. I believe if it remains an issue, then you can always come back and amend the bill later. Some of the questions that I will answer is why? Why are we asking the legislature to take up this issue when, as has been discussed, the school board does have the authority to pass a bill right now? So having the authority and having the blessing of your school district attorney are two very separate things. I have had easily, not an exaggeration, 40 to 50 conversations with my school district attorney over the last 3 to 4 years over this issue. And at the end of the day, the case law on this issue is mixed across the country. We have two circuits, the 7th and the 4th Circuit, who have ruled in favor of transgender rights in the restroom. As has been pointed out by others, that has been based on the Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment, and in some cases, Title IX. We have one dissenting circuit, which is the 11th Circuit, who has found in favor of a school district who passed a policy, and in fact, that is now state law in Florida and has been upheld. It was initially found in favor of transgender rights and then was reversed by the full panel. So I'm not going to get into the issues that we've had in Powell. They're individual student issues and they do not deserve to be discussed on a wide basis at the legislature. What I will tell you is that we have had issues, and we have had this brought to us by numerous parents. It's one of the very few issues in my career. I've had, this is my 15th year as a superintendent, and this is one of the very few issues that I've had 150 people show up to a board meeting over this issue. My school board chose to adopt a resolution that said we would support legislation to provide clarity for Wyoming school districts. And the reason that we need that clarity is because the case law is mixed. It's not wise, it's not wise to violate our attorney's advice to us. But what our attorney did say is what we need a case in the 10th Circuit to be decided, which there is currently one in the pipeline. As has been pointed out earlier, it's the Oklahoma restroom law. That is expected to be decided in this year. So within the next 6 to 7 months, we will know about that. But we do desire to at least look at a policy in Park One, but we do not believe that we can do so without inviting litigation at our level. It is not a wise use of our funds, which are dedicated to serving our students. And so we do believe it should be a state issue. Trying to remember other questions that have been asked out there, but I would also say that the private right of action, I never support adding private rights to action that don't already exist in legislation and state law. So both the private right to action and the accreditation language, I would ask be stricken, because while I would like the state to rules to give us the opportunity to have a policy, I do not want to ensure that every school district, I do believe that that should be a local decision whether a school district entertains a policy. But I am asking for your favorable consideration so that we in Park One can look at policy. And I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Curtis? Senator Rothfuss.
Superintendent Curtis, well, I'm glad to hear I don't have to give you that call, and we've gotten through that. But it's good to see you.
Me too.
Superintendent Curtis, I do have a question though. You know, this is a top-down, one-size-fits-all policy, and it's basically a thou shalt type bill. It sounds like the interest that you have is actually the ability to have a policy without having financial consequences or litigation associated with that. So am I hearing it right that it's not necessarily that you support this particular policy, you just really want to be able to have a policy, and this is a policy?
Superintendent?
Madam Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, you are correct in that. It is, we looked in our district when I brought something to I actually called all of our legislators to a meeting. The only thing that I really had at the time was the Oklahoma law that was passed. And I didn't have any better ideas than that. The things that I liked about it is it was simple and gave us the ability to move at our earliest convenience or expedience. And so I am also going to be testifying on the bill on the House side today in support of that, because we just want something from the legislature that gives us the authority. Frankly, and to put it simply, I don't really care what that is.
Yes, follow up.
Looking at it from the perspective of your transgender students that you have engaged with individually, and I don't need any of their stories, but just based on your experience, you know, I assume that you probably have worked with them on an individual student basis and figured out what was in the best of that interest of that student, and then implemented policies associated with that, and then those policies drew concerns. But when we look at it from the perspective of those students that deserve equal protection, do you feel like they ended up, through the system that we have in place, through your actions, getting a fair shake, getting equal protection, and having their interests satisfied?
Superintendent?
Madam Chairwoman, Senator, so that question is actually kind of like an onion. There are a whole bunch of layers to it. And I will say that our standing policy for this issue started coming up in school districts in about 2016, 2017. And our standard operating procedure was to work with each individual student on an individual level to provide, to ensure that their needs were met and that, we were, I guess, on the right path with those students. So the problem is, and I'll be very frank, I'm not sure that restrooms are necessarily the problem. It's the fact that restrooms also include showers are included in the definition of restroom in all of these cases. And so I think the issue is, because our restrooms, I don't know a restroom in the state of Wyoming, and there could be some, I don't know all the facilities, but I can speak for ours. I don't know any restrooms that don't have privacy stalls in them, which we are examining more private stalls at this point, because I think that's the way our society is going in general for a variety of reasons. Just a side note here, there are a variety of medical conditions that are on the increase that students want more privacy when they use the restroom as well, like irritable bowel syndrome. A student, it's not comfortable for them to use a restroom with their peers when they're experiencing that. However, I also think that, so let me, I guess I'm going to focus on, number one, we love every kid that walks through our district doors. We are called to do so. It is our call to educate them. When it comes to a distraction to our educational environment on the level that it did in Powell this last fall, then we believe that we needed to have a call to action to give us the authority to act on that distraction. I don't think it was safe and I don't think it's safe for transgender students to use their restroom of choice at times. I do believe that it is, it's not lost on me that someone who looks fully female, who may have been born a male, probably should not also be using a boys' restroom. It's not comfortable for them to do that either. So under the equal protection, I do think that, we're not suggesting that there should be bathrooms for the sole use of transgender students. And most schools that I know of, and I've been in one of the smallest school districts in the state as well, and now I'm in a medium-sized district. In all of those cases, we did have single-use private restrooms to make available for a variety of reasons. So for us, if you are non-conforming, then the best option is potentially for you to use a private restroom and certainly a private locker room and not be dressing and undressing in front of students who do not share your biological sex at birth.
Thank you, Jay, appreciate it. Any other questions for the superintendent? Okay, I think you asked a couple of the ones that I was going to ask, so thank you so much for your testimony, Superintendent. Let's go ahead and see if there's anybody else on Zoom right now.
I believe Miss Evans is ready now.
Okay, bring her in.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please introduce
Beautiful.
yourself. I'm not sure we can
Yes.
see you yet, but it's
Let
all right.
me-
If we don't have your video, that's okay.
Yeah, I apologize about that. My internet is being kind of spotty today, so I don't know if I can get my video up.
No worries.
But I would love to address all of y'all. Good morning, Madam Chairman and the rest of the committee. My name is Jessica Evans, and I am a resident of Laramie, Wyoming. I've been in Wyoming my entire life, born and raised in Rock Springs, and came here to get my education. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, and this thing froze again.
We can still hear you, so
Yeah, we
if
can
you
still
wanna
hear you.
keep
So
going.
so go ahead. Don't worry about the video.
You should have said that more quickly.
Would you like to take
Yeah, I was going
another
to
one
say,
in the
technology
meantime?
is wonderful when it works, isn't
I'm
it?
so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're going to have to talk fast, I think, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
I definitely will. So sorry again for all of the issues that I'm having. So anyways, yes, I do have a background in sociology, and the socialization of individuals and how we act in society and what that means. So, as far as this bill goes, I do have a couple of questions. So, as far as the question of the biological sex and how we define it, it focuses on the genitalia, the biological genitalia at birth. So, where does that put students who have both characteristics when born? Do we focus on how their parents are choosing to raise them? Or do we focus on just their sex, their sexual organs alone? There are also individuals who, biologically speaking, do not fit one or the other. There's a phenomenon called huevestoses. Is anybody familiar with that?
I'm not.
Okay, so it is a phenomenon that happens, and it's primarily in Latin American countries, that individuals are born with both sex organs. However, the penis is not present. Um, so you have individuals who are grown up being socialized as women or girls, doing things that girls do, using girl bathrooms, and then at the age of puberty, they begin to grow a penis. So I understand that this is Wyoming and we might not ever run into anything like this, but if we do, where do those children go? Because up until the age of, 12, 13, 14, they have been girls and feel comfortable around girls, but now they have a penis. And so do we put them in a situation where they are potentially going to be harassed and assaulted? Because we all know how excellent pubescent individuals can be to each other. So are we setting those individuals who don't match either sex up to fail? Speaking of the socialization, how is this going to impact their mental health and well-being? Because it is imperative that children especially are able to feel like and participate in the groups that they identify with. And I understand the argument for single-use bathrooms. However, that takes away a very integral part of being an active member in school and in classrooms, taking away sharing experiences in locker rooms and chatting while washing their hands. Going to the bathroom can be a social activity, and we're taking that away from individuals who maybe identify as one sex or one gender and not the sex that they were born with. I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience. So I also want to bring up the SF 0117, the Parental Rights and Education Bill. And in section 1, part B, point 1, we have
Ma'am, I
Yes?
think we just need to stay on this bill. You could probably provide testimony another time for that other bill if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I would just like to talk about the hypocrisy between the two.
Okay. I appreciate your time and your testimony, but we are kind of running a little short of time. But so we'll just focus on your testimony for this bill and leave it at that. But we thank you so
Yeah.
much. Are there any questions for Jessica? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anyone else online?
Taylor Peters
Okay.
should be ready to go.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. We're kind of short on time, so if you could keep your remarks fairly short, that would be great.
Of course. Hello, Madam Chair, Senators. My name is Taylor Peters, and I am representing myself today as a student that attends public school. Thank you for hearing my testimony regarding Senate File Number 62, Restrooms in Publicly Funded Schools. First, I'd like to tell you a little about me. I am 16 years old and a sophomore attending Powell High School. I'm heavily involved in FFA as an officer and on the livestock judging team. I played varsity tennis last fall, and I am active in my church. I also compete on the speech and debate team and travel around the state to argue legislation just like this. What is being lost in the conversation today is the safety and comfort of biological girls. I ask that you please pass this legislation to help protect young women and girls across the state. Currently, there is a male student in my school that identifies as a female and uses the multiple stall bathrooms designated for girls. The idea of men in my space.
Oops, I think we lost you. Oh.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now we can. Yeah, go ahead. We can hear you again.
Okay, my apologies. The idea of men in my spaces makes me extremely uncomfortable and anxious, and I have been forced to change my ways to avoid an encounter. While the stature of this particular student does not scare me, that is not the point. What does scare me is that because of the lack of policy, any male can just say they're female and enter my locker room or bathroom at any given time. In my school, girls are being mocked and taunted about how there's nothing we can do to protect our spaces. We are forced to deal with it. My best friend switched to online school this year, and the number one reason she did so was because of the discomfort she felt in the bathrooms. Last year, I took a weights class, and it really hit me how much smaller and less muscular I am than senior boys. They could take my personal record on bench press that I worked so hard to achieve and use it to curl with. I have no way to defend myself against boys of this size, just based on biology, and I will never achieve in weightlifting what they can. It is terrifying to think that at any moment, a 6-foot, 200-pound guy could just put on a skirt and enter my private spaces without consequence. It is horrifying to read stories of girls who were sexually assaulted in their school bathrooms, such as in Loudoun County, Virginia. What is even more disturbing is the fact that behavior like this is being normalized in schools, by school boards, and by media all across the nation. Some days I feel as though I just need to give up the fight and allow stuff like this to happen. And I seriously questioned whether I should testify today for fear of backlash from certain people at my school. But at the end of the day, I am inspired by the Bible telling me that I am right in this fight and that I deserve to feel safe. I hope it brings you hope and courage to fight the good fight as well. I urge you to please vote yes on this bill today, and I urge you to please retain the language about loss of accreditation. A bill without teeth is nothing. This is a good bill that helps protect everyone, girls, boys, and transgender students. Thank you for your time, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Taylor, for your testimony. Anybody have questions for Taylor? Okay, thank you. It's very brave when you're a high school student to get up and testify, so we appreciate that. Anyone else online?
Madam Chairman, as you can see, Erin Lee is ready to go.
Okay, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name's Erin Lee, and I'm the mother of 3 in Wellington, Colorado, or what I like to call South Cheyenne. 3 years ago, my little girl was secretly transitioned to a boy in her 6th grade classroom and encouraged to use the boys' bathroom without my knowledge. Gender ideology is affecting not just families in Colorado, but also in Wyoming, and real harm is being caused. Take, for example, Ashley Wiley, a Rock Springs teacher who didn't know that her own daughter had been transitioned to a boy in her public school. Take also, for example, a little girl named Sage Blair in Virginia. At 14 years old, Sage was also transitioned to a boy behind her parents' back and encouraged to use the boys' restroom. One day, while she was in the boys' restroom, she was sexually assaulted, which ultimately led her to run away into the arms of sex traffickers who drugged and raped little Sage. Sage Blair's tragic story that started with a sexual assault in the boys' bathroom, which her school directed her to use without telling her family, doesn't end there. And because I only have 2 minutes, I strongly encourage you to look into the full story. Also, don't forget the 15-year-old daughter of Scott and Jessica Smith, who was raped by a trans-identifying male in her girls' bathroom in her high school. And then the school district tried to cover it up, proving that when left to the individual district, they can't always be trusted to do the right thing. Title IX exists in part to protect women and girls, and young girls deserve to assume safety and security in their own bathrooms and locker rooms at school. Senator Rothfuss, to your point about separate but equal, I would actually argue that current practice is discriminatory towards biological females who are forced to use separate spaces when they're uncomfortable to go to the bathroom and change because biological males have invaded their Title IX protected spaces and rights. And data has shown that over 80% of Americans agree. This bill is not discriminatory towards anyone. It is just based in reality, and it is fair. It's kind of wild to think that this bill is even necessary, but based on many horrific incidents like the Wileys, the Blairs, and the Smiths, we know that it is necessary. This bill is common sense. It affirms reality and existing protections for females, and I urge a yes vote on Senate File 62. Thank you in advance for doing the right thing for Wyoming girls.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate you coming on. Anyone else online?
Winter Black should be joining right now. And then just while they're getting ready, Madam Chairman, you do have one more after this.
Okay.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can't see you, but that's all right. Please introduce yourself and tell us what you want us to know about this bill. And we're kind of running short on time. If you could keep your remarks to about 2 minutes, that would be great.
All right, I'll keep it short. I'm Winter Black. I'm a trans man living in Torrington. And I have concerns that this bill is degrading for trans people, and trans students are some of the most vulnerable in our community, and separating them and picking them out of the crowd to remove their ability to just do something as basic and human as going to the bathroom, it's going to lead to bullying, and it's going to lead to higher anxiety and depression rates in our community. And I implore you to just vote no on this bill. And please do not blame trans people for cis men using our community as a cover to invade women's spaces. That's all I really have to say, and thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony, Winter. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. Thanks again for your testimony. Who do we have next?
Madam Chairman, Jesse Simcox, and they're in the room ready to go.
Okay, go ahead, Jesse. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Jesse Simcox. I represent Gays Against Groomers. We're a coalition of LGBT people, and on behalf of Gays Against Groomers, I am in support of this bill. I will keep this very short and simple. I do represent the Midwest region of Gays Against Groomers, and I would like to bring light of a situation in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, where I currently reside. 3 14-year-old freshman girls were approached by a naked 18-year-old senior, a male, in the locker room. So the girls were rinsing off after PE class in their swimsuits, pool, and a naked male was in the shower with them. I urge you to look into the situation. I will submit information on that incident. The school is under a federal investigation because the rights of the teenage girls were violated. And as far as everything that we know is that this 18-year-old naked male in the girls' locker room simply said he was transgender. The school said, as long as, a male can identify as a female, gender identity, it's permissible. And the rights of the girls were violated. So we stand in support of this bill to protect the safety and the privacy, as well as the dignity of girls in school.
Okay, thank you, Jesse, for your testimony. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you again for your time. Appreciate it. Any other testimony? Is that all we have from Zoom?
I did just have one more raise their hand, so
Oh,
if you want to
sure.
take that.
All righty, who is it?
I do not want to butcher their first name.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna let them in.
Let them in, we'll let them introduce themselves. I'll probably butcher it anyway, so.
Hi there.
Hi there, please introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, my angle here is strange on my Zoom camera, but my name is Jai Ayla Sutherland. I appreciate your your consciousness of my name. Jai is fine. I'm calling in from Casper, Wyoming, and I'm here to represent myself, but I am a former city councilor here in Casper, and so I just want to first thank you for your leadership, and I have a small sense of what it takes and understand that it's a really hard role, and so thank you. And thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I know you're running behind, so thanks for letting me speak here. I just want to make a few points, and honestly, there's nothing that I can say that I think would be said better than some of the previous testimony that you've heard, especially from those trans individuals who have been courageous enough to be present here and speak their truth today. The first point I want to make is that we are the equality state. And I think that that means that no one's safety is more important than another's safety. And my concern about this bill is that it creates a situation where we do prioritize the safety of some over others. The second point that I want to make is that this bill really does target an already marginalized and vulnerable community. I think you've heard the stories of those who are declaring to you today that this bill creates fear. And I understand that there's fear on both sides, but I think the evidence shows that our transgender community members are some of, if not the most vulnerable in our communities. And it is clear that schools themselves have been able to meet the needs of their transgender students while also protecting the safety and dignity of other students. So I just don't see why this bill deserves a place in our state laws. The third point that I'd like to make is I'm a mother. I have twin 6-year-olds who just started kindergarten, one boy, one girl. And when I think about the application of this kind of law, I wonder how it might affect them. This point was raised by Elliot earlier, but what does checking look like and who is responsible for that? And will parents be alerted if their students are being questioned? And will the child be able to use a bathroom in the meantime while this is investigated? To me, I feel like this bill puts every child at risk. There are people who choose to do bad things everywhere, but those individuals do not speak for entire communities. And I worry that, for all of those stories that were shared in earlier testimony of girls who are harmed, there are just as many, if not more, for people in the transgender community who are harmed as well. And so I think we just need to allow the schools to care for their students in the way that they have been doing and allow them to, as Sarah mentioned, listen to our students first. And I really just urge you to not let this bill go on any further. Let's put our students first and let's let our hearts and our care come first rather than our fear. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Jai? No? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is that everyone, Ashley?
That's everyone, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, with that, I will go ahead and close public testimony committee. What's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Okay, it's been moved by Senator Olson.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, I've got draft amendments on the charter school issue, the exception issues on page 4, and the accreditation issue. I suspect some of the other committee members might have better amendments than some of those, so however you want to proceed.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Olson?
I have not addressed the charter school issue in amendment, so I'll defer to you on that. I do have an amendment that I would propose on the exceptions.
Okay.
Interested to know what Senator Scott has, but this is what I came up with. On page 4, bottom of the page, after the Roman numerals 3, I would insert a Roman numeral 4. And it would read, for an adult to render assistance to any student or person requiring assistance because of a disability or age.
Will you read that one more time, Senator?
Yep, for an adult to render assistance to any student or person requiring assistance because of a disability or age.
Madam Chairman,
Did you get that, Ashley? Or do you want it read one more time?
One more time.
Okay, third time's.
All right,
charm.
there we go. For an adult to render assistance to any student or person requiring assistance because of a disability or age.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I'll move Senator Olson's amendment because it's better than mine.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good. Any discussion on this amendment? No discussion? Okay. All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, that amendment's passed. Any other amendments?
Madam
Yes, go
Chairman.
ahead, Senator Scott.
Charter schools, page 2 at the bottom after line 21, insert a new subsection V, would read, any charter school not subject to this section as part of a school district shall comply with the requirements of this section as if it were a school district.
Okay, and would you read that again?
Okay, a new V at the bottom, any charter school not subject to this section as part of a school district shall comply with the requirements of this section as if it were a school district. And the attorney's may place it somewhere else, but that, the language would cover it.
Yeah, Madam Chairman.
Ashley, are you good with that, or do you need a third round?
One more time.
One more time. Go ahead,
Okay.
Senator. It's a long one, so I get it.
New V, any charter school not subject to this section as part of a school district shall comply with the requirements of this section as if it were a school district.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yes, discussion?
Madam Chairman, I checked with staff, and I have it on good authority from our gurus in education that we don't need this amendment, that all charter schools, including the statewide authorized charter schools, are considered to be part of a school district, and the language is then unnecessary. They are all covered by this bill. I don't like the bill, but they're covered by it.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to withdraw that?
With that I won't move it.
Okay. Well, that amendment's been withdrawn. Sorry, Ashley, all that work for nothing.
No problem, Madam Chairman. It's good practice.
Yes, go
Madam
ahead. Any
Chairman.
other ones?
Further on page 4, line 17, delete the words after adult. Delete employed by the school district and. So that deals with the small school districts if you're going to use a parent instead of an employee. So I moved that.
Okay. Did you get that, Ashley?
That one I did get.
Okay. Discussion on this amendment. I would just say that does help me a little bit with this part, this portion. I think that'll help our small districts as well, so. Any other amendment? Oh, I guess we better vote on that. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, that amendment's been passed. Any others?
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
And I don't know, Senator Olson might have the same thing, but dealing with the accreditation issue.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I move we delete page 5, lines 8 through 12, and they'll probably have to renumber accordingly. On page 6, delete on lines 15, 16, and 17, the new language. deleting everything after status. And on page 7, starting on line 4, after sex period, delete the word school and delete lines 6 and 7.
5, 6, and 7.
5,
5, 6,
yeah,
and 7.
5, 6, and 7.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. Did you get all that, Ashley?
Just gonna double check real quick. Page 5, lines 8 through 12, delete. Page 6, 15, starting with and through 17. And page 7, starting with school on line 4 through 7.
Madam Chairman, that
I
I
believe
think
you got it.
deletes all the references to the using accreditation.
Okay. Any other discussion on those amendments?
And the attorneys will have to deal with the punctuation.
Okay, sure. All right. All right, if there's no discussion on those amendments, let's vote on those. All those in favor of those amendments, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, those amendments have passed. Any others? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I apologize.
Go ahead, that's all
Madam
right.
Chairman?
I've been called worse.
Yeah. I move to delete on page 5, the H paragraph also about the private right of action, which we heard the districts are, the district that was interested in seeing this legislation move forward and the good sponsor brought it. He's honestly just trying to avoid lawsuits. That's the reason that he requested the legislation in the first place, based on my understanding of his testimony. And it sounded like he was very much against H existing, because that just basically says, all right, bring lawsuits. Welcome all lawsuits. So move the deletion of paragraph H, so that's page 5, lines 14 through 18.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
I would push back on that. I think, of course, a school district or school board would want to delete the section because they don't want liability. So I don't think that's a good reason in and of itself to delete it. I think that parents and legal guardians of students need to have remedy under the law if there's an issue, a protection or safety issue with their children and it's not being handled properly in the school. We need to make sure that there has to be some type of teeth in this legislation. I think the accreditation went too far, so I was okay with that, but I think there should be a private right of action.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Senator Ralphus.
Without that paragraph, it isn't as if somewhere else in the bill or somewhere else in statute denies them a private right of action. School districts are sued all the time, and if there were a violation of this, they still would be. If there were language proposed to deny a private right of action or to restrict access to the courts, I'd join my good friend Senator Olson in opposing that, because I never want to deny access to the courts. And I know you've heard me say it, and you've heard me say it about 1,000 times on the floor. But this is a little different. This is like an invitation. And again, I understand that trying to heighten it as if, all right, bring suit quick, is unnecessary. The school districts will be sued if somebody wants to sue the school district. We don't need to invite it.
Any other discussion on that amendment?
Madam Chairman,
Senator Scott?
I think I would prefer to leave the language in, although I think probably there's adequate ability to sue. Otherwise, if you get a woke school district that wants to just ignore this.
I think that's true.
Any other discussion on this amendment? Yeah, I like to, lean towards lawyers, but again, not understanding some of the stuff that you guys deal with.
Lawyers will always find a way, Madam Chairman, to sue.
Okay.
Whether we give them the statutory authority to or not.
That's true.
And Madam Chairman, we have a
Yep.
practicing attorney that really would like us to leave in the lawsuit provision.
All right, there's no other discussion. Let's vote on that amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no?
No.
No. Okay, that amendment's passed, or that amendment has failed, excuse me.
I heard it the same way.
Any other amendments or changes?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator Rothfuss?
I guess honestly, getting to just the workability aspect of page 4, the Romanet 3 paragraph about coaches and meeting in rooms. I've read this a few times, and the change that you made in the C paragraph made good sense, but the A paragraph and the B paragraph, I don't know if they actually make an awful lot of sense, because the 3 paragraph doesn't start off by referring to a coach of a different gender from the athletes. So all students present are fully clothed, as this is structured, would suggest any coach, which would be the same gender. And the idea that that happens, that doesn't happen. So lawsuit, the moment that the coach walks into a locker room with half-clothed people, regardless of circumstances, seems to be available the way it's written with 3 and A. The B provision, it applies under all circumstances also. So a coach always has to have one additional adult at all times following them. Every circumstance, always. That's the way it's written, Senator Scott.
No. Madam Chairman,
Yes, Senator Scott?
look at the introductory paragraph, page 3, lines 19 through 22. That speaks to the opposite sex question.
Do you think that covers that then?
It does.
Because I have a little bit of an issue with that as well. That's one that still kind of bothers me a little bit, but, and again, I don't like the shall on that, because I just think we're gonna be in kind of tough times with some of our smaller school districts, but I can live with it, and if this moves forward, I can maybe come up with some ideas on it. But,
Madam Chairman.
So did you make an amendment, or you just?
I was raising a concern. The amendment would probably be just to characterize in the Romanet 3 that a coach,
May.
and then by the phrasing of the opposite sex, or something along those lines. But
Okay.
honestly, if nobody else wants to try and solve that problem, I'm not concerned with it.
Okay.
There's a lot of problems with the bill, so
Okay.
we'll try and fix them all.
Senator Olson?
Madam Chairman, I do think Senator Rothfuss is onto something, but we only have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I think I'm comfortable enough leaving it and then working an amendment in the, on the floor if we need to. Because I do follow your logic, I know where you're going, but I don't know the solution right now.
Okay. If there's no other amendments or no other discussion, are we ready for the question? Yes, Senator
Just very
Rothfuss?
briefly, I will be voting no, and I understand the concerns of the people that support this legislation. And we heard valid concerns today, but at the same time, the concerns of our transgender community about targeting and isolation and mental health, legislation like this does more damage to our transgender students and community throughout the state than it provides support or protection for anyone else. These types of bills, to me, seem very mean-spirited, candidly, and I'm disappointed that we spend so much time worrying about top-down solutions related to bathrooms to isolate one particular group of people when we've heard the solution is just working with each individual on an individual basis, which you can do from a school district level, and say, what can we do here that's best for you? What can we do that's best for our students? A policy that actually looks at the individual building and recognizes limitations of that building is going to generate different policies than the top down. So we're once again trying to push down the heavy-handed government from the top, stop school districts from thinking of solutions for themselves, and my school district definitely isn't coming and supporting this bill. Denying parents' choice, right? Because parents are going to want different things for their children. We don't care. This bill doesn't care about what a parent wants for their child. It's just a top-down solution yet again, and I'll be opposed.
Any other discussion? Again, I have a few still issues with this bill. I'll probably vote yes to move it forward. I don't know that I'll vote, on the floor as it moves forward. Just a couple things that I have some issues with. But the bottom line, really, I agree with Sarah Rothfuss. The best bet would be to have school districts be able to do their own policies. But it's not doesn't seem to be the culture that we're in right now. So with that, let's go ahead and take roll unless anyone else has any discussion. All right, let's take roll.
Madam Chairman, on Senate File 62, restrooms in publicly funded schools 2, do pass amended. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson?
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss?
No.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
4 aye, 1 no.
Okay, this bill is passed on to the floor. Senator Larson, I assume you'll be packing this on there, so I'll remember to call on you. And I may get with you and I still have, like I say, a couple things I want to question you about. So thanks everyone for your testimony, for your time today. Appreciate it. This meeting's over. Adjourned. Yeah.